Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
And then I can't even repeat the language that I heard.
I just want to make sure we're getting that right. We listened to the audio, and you were talking about current FBI agents, at least in that radio interview with Lars Larson.
Well, the information I've been getting is from former FBI agents.
So you misspoke to Lars Larson?
If I did say that, that was wrong. I have not spoken to a on-duty FBI agent about anything, I guess, for the last 10 months. I don't know. I've actually never talked about this investigation to any current member of the Justice Department or current FBI agent.
Believe me.
I don't know if I can make it any clearer than that. You can look at my telephone records if you want.
I know that from former agents. I know that even from a few active agents who obviously don't want to identify themselves.
And now we know, and, we've known for some time, but now we know for sure that James Comey started an investigation into Rudy Giuliani and James Kallstrom and the New York FBI, the field office there, to see whether or not they were pressuring or leaking information and making it impossible for James Comey to apply for a warrant to look at Anthony Weiner's computer, which was seized not by the FBI, but by the New York Police Department, and sat upon for 3 weeks and then dumped on James Comey without them getting the appropriate warrant, because they needed a separate warrant to look at any emails that were on Anthony Weiner's computer between Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin. The warrant that they had was a warrant to look at Anthony Weiner and whether or not he was a pedophile. Anthony Weiner and whether or not he was going to porn sites, NAMBLA, like really disgusting, grotesque things. They didn't have a warrant to look at Huma Abedin's materials. And so the New York Police Department didn't get one. They just didn't bother. And then they dumped it on James Comey. And last night, I'd love to play you, the interview last night, but, our friend will pull down my whole show if I play her interview. So I can't play it. But I will tell you what was said last night. There were 2 interviews yesterday. There was one with Jake Tapper, which I was very disappointed. Didn't ask any of the questions that we need answered. Didn't ask him anything about the Hillary Clinton email investigation. Didn't ask him about Anthony Weiner's computer being dumped in the lap of the Maine justice, 11 days before without a warrant, and that Comey was in this untenable position of either applying for a warrant, which would have leaked out, would have been public, or just sending a letter to Congress hoping that they wouldn't leak it out. And of course, he knew that was a non-starter. So he had to do something, because now all of a sudden he had new evidence and he had to look at it to see if these were duplicates. And the New York FBI was, through Rudy Giuliani and through James Kallstrom, who used to be the field director for the New York FBI under Bill Clinton's FBI director, Louis Freeh, had gone to the dark side a long time ago. And James Kallstrom, he started this charity for former FBI agents, okay? And he, that charity really didn't get a whole lot of money. It didn't get until Donald Trump came along. And that charity was the charity that received the largesse from Donald Trump when Donald Trump said that he was going to contribute $1 million to veterans. He did it through James Kallstrom's charity. Okay? And so James Kallstrom, the former New York field officer, of the FBI, he was all over TV saying that the agents in the New York FBI were furious and that there was something coming in October. He knew there was going to be an October surprise. And he was actually asked whether or not James Comey could keep it quiet. If this had to do with James Comey, could he? And James Kallstrom actually says, I don't think Comey can hold on to it any longer. I just don't think so.
Do you think that Comey is going to do something now? I think there's something happening. I mean, people are asking me, what is this about? I think something big is going to happen. I don't know what it is.
In the next 10 days.
It's just my gut feeling.
In the next 10 days.
Yeah, I think so.
So he wouldn't have come out unless he knew it was coming out.
Well, I think he couldn't hold on to it any longer.
Right.
Okay?
See?
Because who knows? I mean, maybe the locals would have stepped in on this thing.
New York
Right.
City would have
Yeah.
done it. That's my
I mean,
take.
who knows? And then he'd really be in the doghouse
He'd be
big
embarrassed
time.
big time. I think he had to do it.
Yeah.
All right, Jim Kallstrom, always good to have you on the show.
But it's not the FBI agents, Judge. It's
I agree
him
with you.
and his hierarchy. The FBI agents are good people.
Agreed.
It's a small organization. You know, they know what's going on. And the agents are furious. And I haven't walked anything back. I didn't walk anything up that deserved to be walked back. So I don't know what they're talking about.
Been no walking.
No. Well, what I'm told by people that aren't directly in the know, but I mean the scuttlebutt in the agency, is that, of course, there's an investigation underway. I mean, the director talked about that. He said he's reopening the investigation.
Oh, boy. So they all had advanced knowledge of what was going on in the New York field office. They knew what the NYPD was doing. James Kallstrom was out there on the TV. Rudy Giuliani was out there on the TV. And they were putting pressure on James Kallstrom, James Comey. They were putting pressure on him to reopen the Clinton email investigation because they wanted to investigate the Clinton Foundation. They wanted to look into the Clinton Foundation, and they, in New York, they just were so anti-Hillary that they were out to get her. They literally were out to get her. And so you had lots and lots of people looking into the Clinton Foundation. There came a time where the FBI, the field offices, made a presentation of the evidence that they believed they had against the Clinton Foundation. And that case was so weak, and it was so unbelievably without evidence and without any, probable cause to continue, that it got shot down as being a course of action, that they could not go ahead and investigate the Clinton Foundation because they had absolutely no evidence of any wrongdoing in the Clinton Foundation. And this infuriated the New York field office. That was what made them crazy. And when James Comey made the announcement that Hillary Clinton had been careless with her emails and that Hillary Clinton maybe, but she had no intent to violate any U.S. laws. She had no intent to defraud the United States of material. She had no intent to hide, anything. She cooperated. She was interviewed. She was forthcoming. She was, honest about mistakes that she had made. And James Comey, just said that he, while she was, and the reason why James Comey had to make that announcement, we now know, is because Loretta Lynch was on her plane on a tarmac. I believe she was in Phoenix, and Bill Clinton's plane was on the same tarmac, and Bill Clinton wandered over to Loretta Lynch's plane and walked onto her plane, and her staff had already been off the plane, so there was nobody there to say, whoa, this is not a good idea, this is an active investigation involving your wife, it's just not a good idea. There was nobody there to do that. And so Loretta Lynch responded to that. That was a media frenzy, if you'll remember. And even I said that was not the brightest idea. That was just not very smart. Okay? But she was in this pickle. And so she decided she would remove herself, not recuse herself, but remove herself from discussing this investigation with James Comey, discussing this investigation with anybody at the Department of Justice, anybody at the, anybody at the FBI. She just said, I will not discuss it with anybody at the FBI. James Comey said that last night. And that whatever he found, whatever he decided to charge or not charge, she would stand by his decision. And that's how she dealt with this media fury over the fact that Bill Clinton got on her airplane. And that was a fair way to deal with it. And even James Comey said that was a fair way to deal with it, except that when it was time to announce the results of the investigation, and the results of the email investigation was that he was not going to charge, the FBI was not going to charge. He thought that if Loretta Lynch was standing next to him, or Loretta Lynch, which would have been the typical usual thing that you would see, would be the Attorney General making the announcement that there were no charges. He thought if it came from her, that everybody would attack her and everybody would attack him, and nobody would be satisfied because Bill Clinton compromised Loretta Lynch. So he is the person that decided to announce that there was no reason to charge and to lay out what he found and what he didn't find. And that's why it came from him. That makes sense to me. Now I understand the reopening of the investigation was because Rudy Giuliani, James Kallstrom, all of Fox News, everybody out there who hated Hillary Clinton, who wanted a pound of flesh, who wanted Trump to win, okay, that all the FBI agents, not all the FBI agents, that there was a fifth column of rogue agents inside the New York Police Department and inside the New York field office of the FBI, and that these law enforcement officials were giving information. They told this to Reuters back in the day. They were giving information that was leaked to former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who they knew very well because Rudy Giuliani was mayor of New York. Rudy Giuliani had a relationship with the NYPD. Obviously, he picked the police commissioner and all this. And that Rudy Giuliani was on TV and James Kallstrom was on TV. He was the former field director for the New York field office, and that they were feeding this stuff to Jeanine Pirro. They were feeding this stuff to Martha McCallum. They were feeding this stuff to Fox and Friends. They were feeding, and we now know that Donald Trump was watching every last bit of it, okay? And that they were doing it to force James Comey to reopen an investigation because they had a plot. They had a plan, and their plot and their plan was to sit on Anthony Weiner's computer, not get a warrant to search it for the presence of Hillary Clinton's emails, but only search it for the purpose of their investigation, which was into Anthony Weiner and whether or not he was a pedophile and whether or not he had pictures of underage girls on his computer, or boys for that matter, any of those things. And they did not have a warrant that specifically said that they could look at anything from Huma Abedin, and they dumped it on Comey, and Comey had absolutely no he just knew that if he didn't report, if he didn't send a letter to Congress when he promised that if any new information came across his desk, he would do that. If he didn't, then and if Hillary Clinton won, she would be viewed as an illegitimate president, and all these investigations into him, into his beloved FBI, would all come out. And that all of it would look, in hindsight, like he was covering something up, and he refused to be political in any way, and he wouldn't cover it up. So he sent a quiet letter to Congress, and they leaked it within seconds. And in return, well, before they leaked it, James Comey saw what we saw. He saw Rudy Giuliani on the TV on October 24th, 25th, 26th. They saw James Kallstrom, and he quietly went to the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, who is every agency has an IG. It's kind of like you're familiar with this if you know that the police department has internal affairs. That's what an IG is. He's the internal affairs guy, and every government agency has an IG. For the DOJ, it's Michael Horowitz. And James Comey did go to Michael Horowitz, and he did open up an investigation into Rudy Giuliani, James Kallstrom, and the New York field office, but he doesn't know the result because he was fired.
That's Martha.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Man, this thing with Rudy Giuliani, James Kallstrom, the Fox News people, Fox, one vowel movement away from what it does to the news, really changed the election. So for everybody that thinks that, the Fox News, who watches it and da-da-da-da-da, they literally changed the course of the election. After the FBI reopened the email investigation, Hillary Clinton's poll numbers were cut in half. Seriously, cut in half. And if you think that the Russians didn't have an effect, and if you think that propaganda news didn't have an effect, and if you think Fox News, which is propaganda, didn't have an effect, and Rudy Giuliani didn't have an effect, and James Kallstrom didn't have an effect, and Jeanine Pirro didn't have an effect, and Sean Hannity, who's like the shadow chief of staff to President Trump now, and is like this crazy a mouthpiece on radio for 4 hours a day, and then on the TV for an hour a night, and then Jeanine Pirro on the TV, and all these freaks on the TV. If you think that they didn't change the outcome of an election by lying, by covering up that they knew what was going on inside the New York field up, that they were pressuring, our FBI into inserting itself into a live. That's just, and these are the things that are violations of the Hatch Act. And you know how we always say, well, we've never had any prosecutions of the Hatch Act. Well, maybe we should, because what the Hatch Act says is that you can't, if you're a law enforcement officer or a government employee, or you're advocating on behalf of a candidate, you can't advocate on behalf of a candidate if you're, in uniform, whatever. And that is why it's such a big deal that they were talking to live New York Police Department and live FBI agents, because it's prohibited. Okay, so here's what James Comey said last night. Here was the question, and I'm sorry I can't play it for you, but it's just one of those things. Did Rudy Giuliani and therefore the Trump campaign have advance notice from inside the FBI, from the New York field office or wherever, that this announcement from you was coming? And Comey said, not that I know of, but I saw that same publicity, meaning these clips that I been playing ever since, right? That same publicity. And so I commissioned an investigation to see if we could understand whether people were disclosing information out of the New York office or any other place that resulted in Rudy's report on Fox News and other leaks that we were seeing in the media. I don't know what the result of that was. I got fired before it was finished, but I know that I asked that it be investigated. Well, you have to understand that he doesn't know the outcome of that investigation, but that he did start that investigation, and so did members of Congress. So did Elijah Cummings. And at the time, John Conyers, who obviously they went after with a vengeance. Like I said, I've known John Conyers for years, and is he a grabby guy? Is he, one of those, patch on the butt guy? Yes, he is. He is. And John Conyers is no longer serving in Congress. You know that because they went after him with a vengeance, and he resigned. He was an older guy. I mean, really older. And so he said, it's not worth it. I'm not going to fight this. And he left. But it was Elijah Cummings and John Conyers who wrote letters to the IG. They wrote letters to Michael Horowitz, and they demanded an investigation into FBI leaks to Rudy Giuliani about the Clinton email investigation. They wrote letters to Michael Horowitz and also top Democrats on the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee signed it. It was a scathing letter that they sent to Michael Horowitz, the IG for the DOJ. And they said you need to probe the Bureau for leaks in light of Giuliani bragging about obtaining leaked information from former agents. Quote, it's absolutely unacceptable for the FBI to leak unsubstantiated and in some case false information about one presidential candidate to benefit the other candidate. Leaking this information of former FBI officials as a conduit to the Trump campaign is equally intolerable. That letter was sent just a few hours after Rudy Giuliani was on Fox and Friends in the morning and admitted that he knew about the October 28th letter that James Comey was going to send to Congress before he sent it to Congress. That's did I hear about it? You're damn right I heard about it. And I can't even repeat the language that I heard from some former FBI agent's comment. Now, he has publicly denied that, he went on Wolf Blitzer, and Wolf Blitzer said, wait a minute, did you were on Lars Larson's radio show, and you said that you had heard from some active agents also, from some active who obviously don't want their day, and he goes, well, I haven't talked to any FBI agents in, I don't know, starts playing with his ear, 10 months. Well, I've never talked to any active agents about this investigation. That is just not true. That is just not true. Obviously, he's talking to active agents who don't want. I mean, he gives a whole description of the active agents he's talking to, and he says they don't want their names revealed, obviously, because they're still serving. He repeats it. So, obviously there's an investigation, and I'm sure that James Comey would love to know. And it looks like we will know, because the IG obviously issued a report on Andy McCabe. Now, Andy McCabe, just so you remember, Andy McCabe was not part of the Hillary Clinton email investigation at all. At all. But Andy McCabe did give, an interview to the Wall Street Journal to a man named Devlin Barrett on October 30th after all this crap hit the fan. And the IG, Michael Horowitz, concluded that Andy McCabe, in this interview with the Wall Street Journal, misrepresented the interview he gave to the Wall Street Journal when he was questioned about it. He wasn't truly forthcoming about why he did it or what. And James Comey said last night that McCabe didn't tell him he was doing it, but he was completely authorized to do it as the number two in the FBI at the time that he gave the interview. When the email investigation was over, his wife had already lost her election. Now, remember, Trump went after Andy McCabe. Trump went after his wife because Andy McCabe's wife, Dr. McCabe, his wife is a physician. She decided to run for a state seat in the Virginia legislature. And, of course, the governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, was very keen on having her succeed in her attempt to gain a seat in the Senate in Virginia, because Virginia has a Republican legislature. And McAuliffe, obviously, is a Democrat and would like to flip the seat. So he was very supportive of her running. He donated to her campaign, through the, his Democratic campaign funds and all this. And she had already lost by the time McCabe was promoted. It was already over. She had lost. And that's when Andy McCabe became the number 3 at the FBI. Okay, so Andy McCabe had nothing to do with Hillary Clinton's email investigation. And it wasn't until after his wife lost that he got pushed up to the main justice. So, but Trump was on the campaign trail and he was trashing Andy McCabe the whole time. Giuliani was trashing, the Comey decision the whole time. James Kallstrom was on TV trashing the Comey decision to close the Hillary email investigation. Everybody was trashing, just attacking the FBI. And then when Comey reopened, because Giuliani and Kallstrom put all this pressure that they, out in the open, out in the main, conversation, things that nobody, should know about. But they were saying, oh, well, we're talking, they're furious. They're just livid. They're so angry. I can't even tell you. Hillary Clinton, she lied. And, the agents are furious.
They indicted. They weren't allowed to get the medical records.
Yeah, of course.
Well, you do that to an honest FBI agent. Just an honest guy doing his job. He gets angry.
Yeah.
So this has been boiling up in the FBI since generic. I did nothing to get it out. I had no role in it. Did I hear about it? You're darn right I heard about it. And I can't even repeat the language that I heard.
So he heard language from active FBI agents. He heard language that he's repeat, and this was all out there. And so it literally there was a conspiracy to sit on Anthony Weiner's computer. Hope that Comey said, let's go forward with the Clinton Foundation after the emails. Let's go. And they said, no, there's no evidence there. There's really nothing. There's a very weak case. So, it was they said, absolutely not. We're not doing it. And, McCabe gives this interview to the Wall Street Journal trying to explain what happened with regard to the investigation into the Clinton Foundation. And he also tells the Wall Street Journal about how they needed to sit there on the Anthony Weiner computer, which gets dumped in Comey's lap, on October 28th, and that they wasted the whole weekend because they had to get a warrant. They couldn't review the emails, which they finally got the warrant over the weekend. And they needed a separate warrant because the warrant that they got for Anthony Weiner to search Anthony Weiner and anything related to Anthony Weiner, it wasn't covering looking into Hillary Clinton's emails. And so there's James Comey on Friday said that there were sharp internal disagreements over matters related to the Clinton. He was trying to figure out how to handle those matters fairly and carefully, according to this Wall Street Journal article. And it says, even as the probe of Mrs. Clinton's emails wound down in July, internal disagreements within the Bureau and the Justice Department surrounding the Clintons' family philanthropy heated up. So the email investigation is over, and the New York field office doesn't want to let Clinton off. They are literally hunting her, and they want to do the Clinton Foundation. So in early October, the New York field office, and this is from an October 30th article. This is the one Andy McCabe is in trouble for giving. Even though we know that Andy McCabe was authorized by his position alone to give this information to the Wall Street Journal, to Devlin Barrett, who now works at the Washington Post. But you don't need to know that. But the latest development in early October, this is what it says. The New York-based FBI officials notified Andrew McCabe, the Bureau's second-in-command, that while investigating Mr. Weiner for possibly sending sexually charged messages to a teenage minor, they had recovered his laptop. Many of the 650,000 emails on the computer, they said, were from the accounts of Miss Abedin, Anthony's wife, according to people familiar with the matter. Those emails stretched back years, these people said, and were on a laptop that hadn't previously come up in the Clinton email probe. Ms. Abedin said in late August that the couple was separating. The FBI had searched the computer while looking for child pornography, people with the familiar with the matter said, but the warrant they used didn't give them authority to search for matters related to Mrs. Clinton's email arrangement at the State Department. Mr. Weiner has denied sending explicit or indecent messages to the minor. In their initial interview of the laptop, the metadata showed many messages, apparently in the thousands, that were either sent to or from the private email server at Mrs. Clinton's home that had been the focus of so much investigative effort for the FBI. Senior FBI officials decided to let the Weiner investigators proceed with a closer examination of the metadata on the computer and report back to them. At a meeting early last week of the senior Justice Department and FBI officials, a member of the department's senior national security staff asked for an update on the Weiner laptop. At that point, officials realized no one had acted to get a warrant. They sat on it. They sat on it. It was Andrew McCabe who then instructed the email investigators to talk to the Weiner investigators and see whether the laptop's contents could be relevant to the Clinton email probe. After the investigators spoke, the agents agreed it was potentially relevant. Comey was then given an update and decided to go forward with the case and notified Congress on Friday with explosive results. Senior justice officials had warned the FBI that telling Congress, so this had to be Loretta Lynch, warning Comey that telling Congress would violate policies against overt actions that can affect an election. And some within the FBI have been unhappy at Mr. Comey's repeated public statements on the probe going back to the press conference on the subject in July. Now we know why Comey gave that press conference on the subject in July, and it was because he didn't want it to come from Loretta Lynch, because Loretta Lynch was compromised by the Bill Clinton tarmac meeting, which Fox News used to say, oh, see, there's collusion between Loretta Lynch and the Clintons, and da-da-da. And so Comey didn't want Hillary Clinton to... The results of the email investigation, which showed, that she had no intent to defraud the United States or no intent to give her information or classified stuff to spies or to adversaries or any other thing, right? And so he thought it should come from me, and that's why he had it. Okay, so this is October. The back and forth reflects how the Bureau is probing several matters related or directly or indirectly to Mrs. Clinton and her inner circle. The senior law enforcement officials repeatedly voiced skepticism of the strength of the evidence in a Bureau investigation of the Clinton Foundation. Because after the email thing was settled, the New York field office, they weren't happy. They were pissed. And that is what they were saying on the TV. They're PO'd. They're pissed. I mean, these are good agents. And, of course they're furious. They wanted to look into the Clinton Foundation after the Clinton email case was closed. And the probe of the foundation had begun a year before it had begun a year before we even knew there was a Clinton Foundation. Okay, so it was going on separately from the email investigation. So it was already well underway. It had already probed the foundation for at least a year to look for financial crimes or influence peddling related to the charity, the Clinton Foundation. So they had a meeting to look at the evidence about the Clinton Foundation, and they said that what they were finding was nothing. The FBI made their presentation, the New York field office, the Arkansas, the Little Rock field office, the DC field office, the LA field, they all made a presentation about the Clinton Foundation, and there was nothing there. And everybody that looked at it said, there's nothing here. Your evidence isn't there. It's weak. And they said, no, we're not going to go forward with the Clinton Foundation. And this is what literally made them crazy. This is what made them nuts. And so the New York field office, or the Washington field office, they decided they'll investigate Terry McAuliffe.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
And I think he's got a surprise or two that you're going to hear about in the next 2 days.
Right.
I mean, I'm talking about some pretty big surprise.
Oh, yeah, I heard you say that this morning. What do you mean?
You'll see.
Stay tuned. Rudy Giuliani, you're lucky because we got to go. I'm out of time. Otherwise, I keep pressing you.
We're not going to go down, and we're certainly not going to stop fighting. We've got a couple things up our sleeve that should turn this around in a way that even the liberal pollsters will get to see it.
Oh my God! And this is exactly what happened. They released the letter that Comey had written to Congress. They knew that they had forced Comey's hand. They knew that they had put enough pressure on from the New York field office. They knew that that if he didn't reopen the case and Hillary won, that Hillary would look like she cheated. And Comey didn't want that to happen, and he had to weigh whether or not sending a letter to Congress would leak. He knew it would, but he also knew that if he didn't, reopen the case, to at least apply for a warrant, which New York refused to do, and take a look at these 650,000 emails that to see if they were anything. He knew that if he didn't do it. And remember his testimony. Comey's testimony was that he sent the letter to Congress because they didn't think that they would get completed with the investigation into the 650,000 new emails by the time the election happened. They just didn't think that they could get that done. And then they found out they needed a new warrant, and they had to sit on the computer for almost a whole weekend while they applied for a warrant to get into the computer in the first place. And then he said they worked round the clock, day and night. They got finished 2 days before the election, 2 days before. And people want to say Comey's a son of a bitch. No, it's not Comey that's a son of a bitch. It's Rudy Giuliani that's the son of a bitch. It's Fox News that are sons of bitches. It's James Kallstrom that's a son of a bitch. It's all these people around Trump that knew all this stuff ahead of time because they were talking to FBI. You got to remember, Keith Schiller, Trump's bodyguard, he's an NYPD officer, okay? That's probably why he had to leave all of a sudden, because he's under investigation. And who did Donald Trump choose to deliver the note after he fires Comey on television? Okay, Comey is out in Los Angeles giving a speech to the LA field office and reads on TV that at first he reads on TV that he resigned. Well, he knew he didn't resign. And then Fox updates it and said, no, he was fired. And so he gets on a plane. Now we know he drank wine and looked down at the United States as he crossed from LA back to, Washington, D.C. And he was just thinking how much he loved this country, but, I couldn't believe what's been going on. And he knows what happened. He also knew at that time that he had ordered an investigation into Rudy Giuliani, into James Kallstrom, and he knew he would never get the answer because he was now out of the loop. He was now fired, and he just had to sit there and take it. He just had to sit there and take it. Now, Andy McCabe was not part of the Clinton email investigation. He was in the Washington field office, and they were looking at financial relationships with Terry McAuliffe before he became a Clinton Foundation board member. And McAuliffe denied any wrongdoing. His lawyer said the probe was focused on whether he failed to register as an agent of a foreign entity, which is so unbelievable because that's exactly what Manafort and Gates and Michael Flynn have been charged with. But the Clinton Foundation officials, had always said they hadn't done anything wrong. They had shown that it was a well-run charity, that it had done immense good. But the FBI field office in New York, who did the most work on the Clinton Foundation case and got help from the FBI field office in Little Rock, were called to give a briefing. To find out whether, now you got to remember, FBI agents aren't necessarily lawyers. They're police officers, okay? They're investigators. They're not lawyers. And so, they think everything is criminal. They don't know what the legal threshold is for the prosecutor. They have no idea what they, how high the bar would be. But they're screaming it's criminal, it's criminal. So in February, the FBI officials made a presentation to the Justice Department, and it did not go well. The FBI, and this is what it said in the Wall Street Journal, the FBI didn't present a compelling evidence to justify more aggressive pursuit of the Clinton Foundation, and the career anti-corruption prosecutors in the room simply believed it wasn't a very good case. And one participant who came out of the meeting told others that was one of the weirdest meetings I had ever been to. Anti-corruption prosecutors, the prosecutors at the Justice Department told the FBI at the meeting they wouldn't authorize a more aggressive investigative approach to the Clinton Foundation. They weren't going to issue subpoenas. There was no probable cause. There was no grand jury that was going to be set up. They didn't see that there was a case that could be presented. But the New York FBI, the field, they went ahead and pursued the leads. They went ahead and they just kept going. A week after Comey announced in July that he wasn't going to recommend prosecution in the email case, the New York FBI decided that it wanted to refocus on the Clinton Foundation probe. And Andy McCabe, according to this Wall Street Journal article, and this might be where Andy McCabe is making himself look good, I have no earthly idea, because the IG did find that McCabe gave this interview. He obviously was authorized to do it, but that he lied to the investigators about why he did it or what he said. But McCabe says this isn't a quote, but this is the Wall Street Journal reporting that the FBI sought to refocus on the Clinton Foundation probe, with Mr. McCabe deciding the FBI's New York office would take the lead with assistance from Little Rock. The Washington field office, FBI officials decided, would focus on a separate matter involving Terry McAuliffe, the governor of Virginia, and, obviously a good Clinton friend. Mr. McCabe had decided earlier in the spring that he would continue to recuse himself from that probe, given the governor's contribution to his wife's former political campaign. So McCabe is telling New York, you take the lead, and he isn't involved in it. He recuses himself. Within the FBI, the decision was viewed with skepticism by some who felt the probe would be stronger if the foundation and McAuliffe matters were combined. Others, the Justice Department anti-corruption prosecutors, felt that both probes were weak and found very little that would merit expanded investigative authority. According to a person familiar with the probes, on August 12th, a senior Justice Department official called Andy McCabe to voice his displeasure at finding that the New York FBI agents were still openly pursuing the Clinton Foundation probe during the election season. Mr. McCabe said agents still had the authority to pursue the issue as long as they didn't use overt methods requiring Justice Department approval. The Justice Department official was, quote, very pissed off, according to one person close to Mr. McCabe, and pressed McCabe to explain why the FBI was still chasing a matter the department considered dead, dormant. Others said the Justice Department was simply trying to make sure FBI agents were following the longstanding policy not to make overt investigative moves that could be seen as trying to influence an election. So McCabe is sort of hinting that he told them to continue to test the system and see if they were leaking. This is why I think the IG found that Andrew McCabe sort of tried to make himself look really good in this article, and that when he was asked about it, I don't know what he said in private, when he's asked about it, by law enforcement officials, by the IG, but apparently he didn't tell the truth about this article. And this is the only article I can find that Devlin Barrett wrote in that time period that involves Andy McCabe. So it's got to be about this. But that's why McCabe is in trouble. And according to this article, Mr. McCabe asked, quote, are you telling me that I need to shut down a validly predicated investigation? Mr. McCabe asked, according to people familiar with the conversation. After a pause, the official replied, of course not. For Mr. McCabe's defenders, the exchange showed how he was stuck between an FBI office, eager to pour more resources into a case, and Justice Department prosecutors who didn't think they had a case. Following that call, Mr. McCabe reiterated past instructions to FBI agents that they were to keep pursuing the work within the authority they had. Others further down the FBI chain of command said agents were told to stand down. Others familiar with the matter deny McCabe or any other senior FBI official gave such a stand down instruction. But for the agents in the New York field office who were investigating the Clinton Foundation for more than a year and finding nothing, and the prosecutors were saying, there's nothing here. There is nothing here. We don't even have probable cause. We couldn't even get a subpoena. We wouldn't issue a subpoena. You couldn't. There's nothing. But the New York FBI, they were very, very pissed. But for the prosecutors, they said no significant evidence of criminal conduct, and the right response is to do nothing. Agents on the Foundation case in September then asked to see the emails that were part of the Wiener investigation. But the Eastern District of New York in Brooklyn rejected that. And those emails were given to the FBI instead, based on grants of partial immunity and limited use agreements, meaning the agents could only use them for the purpose of investigating possible mishandling of classified information. The FBI agents in New York were dissatisfied with that answer and asked for permission to make a similar request to the federal prosecutors in Manhattan. And Mr. McCabe, these people said, told them no, because they're not allowed to go prosecutor shopping. And not long after that discussion, the FBI agents informed the Bureau's leaders about the Wiener laptop and dumped it on James Comey. And they didn't get a warrant. They hadn't done anything with it. And so it came on, Comey's, it appeared on Comey's desk 11 days before an election without a warrant. And New York had, in September, they were sitting there saying, we want to look at it. We want to look at it. And they're like, no. So now we have to wait for Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General at the DOJ, to finish his investigation into Rudy Giuliani, talking to active agents, violating rules and protocols, and and going prosecutor shopping and judge shopping basically, and going to different court and trying to we have to look at the IG's report, and so he's already issued a report on McCabe. And the report that the IG found on McCabe was that McCabe, lied about, giving this interview to the Wall Street Journal in some way. And I don't know which way he lied. Obviously, he was authorized to do it. He didn't need permission from James Comey. James Comey said last night that he would have preferred that McCabe came to him. But McCabe didn't go to him, and it wasn't necessary that he goes to him. So you know that Comey's out of the loop on all this crap that's going on in New York. And he doesn't know anything about all this crap that's going on in New York until they dump the computer in his lap and say they've had this in New York since early October. So it's very interesting. And I honestly, all I could tell you is that Congress wrote a letter to the IG, Michael Horowitz. The Democrats, as soon as they saw Rudy Giuliani on the TV, as soon as I saw Rudy Giuliani on the TV, as soon as we heard the crap that Jeanine Pirro was saying and Kallstrom was saying, oh, they're furious, they want to reopen, they wanted this, they wanted that, they're really, really, and then Giuliani with his October surprise and, we got something up our... That's when the Democrats in Congress wrote a letter to Michael Horowitz, and subsequently we now know that James Comey also saw what we saw and wrote to Michael Horowitz and said, please open an investigation into Rudy.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
So let's talk about the investigation and what you can talk about it. In January 2017, when you met with President Trump and you did that oral presentation of what's in that two-page memo summarizing the Steele dossier, we know from the book that you talked about these unverified allegations involving him and prostitutes. Did you brief him about any of the other things in the Steele dossier? Claims that his associates, Michael Cohen or Paul Manafort, were potentially working with the Russians? Or was it only about the prostitutes?
It was only about the salacious part of it.
Why? Yeah. Why only about that?
Because that was the part that the leaders of the intelligence community agreed he needed to be told about, because we knew it and thought it was about to become public. And if it was true, we didn't know whether it was true, it would be important to let him know this as part of a defensive briefing.
While we're on the subject of the dossier, by the time you left, how much of it do you think you were able to either prove to be correct, verify, or debunk?
The work was still underway. I wouldn't be able to say anyway if I was still there, but the work was still underway when I was fired.
Some of it, is it fair to say that some of it you verified as true and some of it you debunked as false?
I think all I can say is a core part of it was consistent with lots of other intelligence, core part of it being the Russians are engaged in an orchestrated campaign to influence the American election.
Jesus Christ. Poor Comey. I mean, this is just right. I mean, it's just beyond belief. It's just beyond belief. And I've read his memos. His memos track almost identically to the testimony that he gave to the House and Senate before he was fired, after he was fired. I mean, the memos were written, and he even makes a note about the memos to let you know when and why he wrote the memos. He's never heard anything like this, President. He had never seen anything like this. He had never dealt with, subject matter like this. And so he actually writes an email to Andy McCabe, to James Baker, to James Rybicki, and says this to them. He said, "What follows are notes I typed in the vehicle immediately upon exiting Trump Tower on January 6th, 2017. Although I wrote this less than 5 minutes after the meeting and have tried to use actual words spoken, including quoting directly in some places, I have not used quotation marks throughout because my purpose was to capture the substance of what was said. I'm not sure of the proper classification here, so have chosen secret. Please let me know if it should be higher or lower than that." So these Comey memos, these were classified. And Devin Nunes, who is an imbecile, that man has got to be dumber than Sean Hannity. Devin Nunes made this big thing. I want Comey's memos. I want Comey's memos. And Comey was sitting with Jake Tapper. Was it Jake Tapper? Yes. And said to him yesterday, Jake Tapper said, well, they're going to make your memos public. He goes, I really don't care. I honestly don't have a problem with it. If they want to declassify them, fine with me. I have nothing to hide. Which is what you say when you're innocent. Which is what you say when you've documented meetings, one after the other, within 5 minutes of those meetings happening. And you made the notes and you sent the notes to the Office of the General Counsel of the FBI, who's James Baker, and to the operations guy, over at the FBI, so that your contemporaneous notes are documented within 5 minutes of the meeting. So he said, I don't care if they come. So idiot boy Nunes, he wants them out. James Comey said, I don't care. I have no problem with it. And they released the memos to Congress within seconds. I have the memos. Within seconds. The memos come out yesterday afternoon. I mean, literally, it was like seconds. So I have them. There's 15 pages of documenting conversations he had with a crazy man. I mean, literally a crazy man who is completely obsessed with the PP story. Donald Trump is the person that made James Comey suspicious about the PP story because Donald Trump can't let it go. He asked James Comey, according to these meetings that they had, one on January 6, 2017, then another meeting on my birthday, January 28th, 2017. Then he has another meeting with the president on February 8th, 2017. And then he has another meeting, oh my God, on Valentine's Day, the 14th of December. And he brings it up at every single meeting about the PP tape. He can't stop talking about it. The president himself. James Comey isn't bringing it up. This is why James Comey told President Trump he wasn't under investigation. Maybe you didn't understand, or we didn't understand back when Comey was testifying. What James Comey told Donald Trump was he was not under investigation with regard to the prostitute story. No one was looking at Donald Trump. Nobody was investigating it. James Comey told Donald Trump, sir, you don't want me looking into this. Okay, because Donald Trump said, I want you to investigate it. I want you to say it's not true. And he says to the president, well, you don't want me looking into you because it could get out that the FBI director is investigating the president. That won't play in Peoria. Okay, that's not a good idea. And also, it's very hard to prove a negative. So leave it alone. Nobody is looking at you for being with hookers or not being with hookers at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in 2013 before you were president. Nobody is looking at that. We just needed to brief you, sir, because it could be used as compromise against you. It could be used to blackmail you. Do you understand? That is the only reason why we briefed you about this, is so you would know what was out there. CNN was going to go with the story, but they weren't going to. They negotiated with the Department of Justice not to talk about the PP tape. BuzzFeed, on the other hand, felt that it was important to know that the president could be, and BuzzFeed printed it. And so they were going to sue BuzzFeed, right? So Michael Cohen, this idiot, sues BuzzFeed for defaming, his man, for defaming Donald Trump. And yesterday, Michael Cohen, who is under criminal investigation himself now, drops the BuzzFeed case because he can't go through discovery. Michael Cohen, his offices were raided. There are probably conversations that were taped and emails that went back and forth about that tape, and whether or not Michael Cohen thought it was true and needed to cover it up, or whether or not Michael Cohen, took steps to keep BuzzFeed from conversations. And then yesterday, after all this with Giuliani, and knowing now, and this is why it's so important that you understand a little bit of what happened here with the New York field office and how the New York field office was talking to Rudy Giuliani, talking to James Kallstrom, telling them their plan because they were so pissed about Comey's decision not to prosecute Hillary Clinton on the emails, and then pissed off even further because the judges who were sitting, over these cases said, no, we're not going to issue subpoenas for the Clinton Foundation. The prosecutors, don't believe that, this is prosecutable. There's a high bar here. You're basing your stupid investigation off of the Clinton cash book, which is, Schweitzer's book. This is really what got them going. There's no there. You have absolutely nothing. It's not prosecutable. Meanwhile, Andy McCabe is telling New York, where he came from. He was in the New York field office. He's telling the New York field that, don't worry, you can keep going. Just keep going. And they do. And McCabe is telling the Wall Street Journal, well, I told them that they should keep going because I wanted to test the system. I wanted to see if they were going to leak. I don't know. And now Andy McCabe has been found to be less than forthcoming when they interviewed him, when the IG interviewed him. So there's that. But Rudy Giuliani, who is obviously under investigation by the Inspector General at the Department of Justice, has now joined the Trump legal team. So Rudy, what? He's going to be in charge of investigating himself? And so then late yesterday, they go, well, Rudy's, role is going to be very limited. He's going to go and convince Mueller to drop the whole thing. Because Rudy knows Mueller because, Rudy was the U.S. attorney of the Southern District of New York, which is, this is crazy. This is just crazy. This is nuts. And the Southern District of New York is investigating Michael Cohen. And it was referred to the Southern District of New York by Robert Mueller. So Rudy Giuliani, who was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, before he became the mayor of New York and, appointed their police commissioner and, became, like the go-to guy for NYPD, the go-to guy for the New York field office. He's going to convince Mueller to drop the whole thing. That's his limited role. Because Rudy Giuliani, trust me, there's no way ethically he could be Donald Trump's lawyer in the Russia investigation while he's under investigation by the Inspector General of the Department of Justice. There is no way. Plus, you got to remember, Rudy Giuliani is very tied up with Russia. Very tied up. Rudy Giuliani is very tied up with cybersecurity. Rudy Giuliani's got his fingers in all kinds of pies. And Rudy Giuliani works for a giant lobby shop named Greenberg Traurig. So this is, there's no way Rudy Giuliani can be Trump's lawyer. There's just no way. This whole thing is so It's such a small little cabal of people. It's like the heads of the five families. I mean, it really is that. And it's so dirty and it's so bad. All right. Eddie in San Jose.
Hi, Randy.
Hey.
Yes, you are so right how bad this is.
It's so bad.
And you've been doing a fantastic job explaining it over, just this last week. There's been another avalanche of stories swirling around the New York FBI field office in particular. And you just mentioned the key two-word phrase that I wanted to say was Clinton cash.
Yeah, that's what started the whole foundation exercise.
Investigation, yeah. And people should remember that book came out in the spring of 2015, a full year before the election. And the pre-release versions were hammered by all the people that it was pre-released to because it had, 10, 20, I don't know how many material, incorrect facts in it, unfacts in it. And the publisher, I think, had to re-release it after taking back some of that stuff. But that was Peter Schweitzer's book.
Right.
And Schweitzer, when he wrote it, was being financed by the Mercer family.
And Steve Bannon. And Breitbart,
And David Bossie of Citizens United.
Exactly. I'm telling you, this was like, the cabal of people who hate the Hillary the most, who write these horrible books and put out murder lists and accuse her of running pedophile rings. It's the same group of people.
Well, Citizens United, people now think of it as the Supreme Court decision, but before the Supreme Court decision,
it was a movie.
It was a hit job on Clinton.
It was a movie.
Yeah.
It was a hit job movie that made no sense to prosecutors. It made no sense to people who do law enforcement because it was all garbage.
Yep.
But
the FBI based their investigation on, or started their investigation in New York on that, using that book as the starting point.
Yes.
And that's why when they kept going to all these U.S. attorneys saying, hey, look what we found, all these U.S. attorneys said, there's no there. It's a
basically, I just want people to sit up and pay attention to these words that I'm going to say. Are you surprised that there are dirty cops within the FBI or that there are dirty cops in NYPD? Really? This is a shocking piece of information to people?
Absolutely.
Right. That's the easiest way to understand it.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
We know that at least two people in the Trump world, Papadopoulos and Trump Jr., were approached by people with Kremlin ties and told about dirt on Hillary Clinton. We know that there is an expression of a desire for that information. We know that two people in the Trump world reached out to Julian Assange. We know that Julian Assange and WikiLeaks published these emails, and we know that President Trump made a lot of hay out of those emails.
Damn.
First of all, am I missing anything? Is there anything else in the conspiracy that we don't know?
I can't answer that.
Oh, my God.
Of everything I just said, which is all in the public domain, is that enough for a conspiracy charge against anybody?
It's really not something I can answer. I would say this. You'd certainly, if you're the special prosecutor, want to understand those facts and any around them to try and make that analysis.
But is there a case there?
You don't want me to say it's possible again. It's possible, but I don't know.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know what Mueller's doing. He doesn't know. But, he knows what we know. That's public. And there are other things that he does know that he can't comment on because it's a live investigation into a conspiracy to defraud the United States, a conspiracy to collude. See, collusion is, like we said, it's not a legal term, but a conspiracy through collusion with a foreign adversary is a crime. It would be a crime of conspiracy. A conspiracy to defraud the American people from choosing a president. A conspiracy to defraud the United States. Obviously, that is what they're looking into in Mueller land. And remember, Mueller didn't get picked, to be the special prosecutor until after James Comey was fired. And James Comey, obviously wanted a special prosecutor because Donald Trump was tweeting, idiot boy. He was tweeting that there were tapes. There were tapes that Comey, when Comey was in the Oval Office, when Comey was at this dinner, when Comey was briefing the president, when Comey was, talking to Donald Trump tweeted that Comey better hope there are no tapes. And Comey said on other shows that he went, and his testimony is classic. He went, Lordy, Lordy, I hope there are tapes, right? But Comey has continually said that a light bulb went off in his head, that maybe there were tapes. And that's why he gave his private notes, his declassified notes, not these classified memos, but declassified notes to his friend to give to the newspapers so that Rod Rosenstein, who was picked by President Trump, would order a special prosecutor to find the tapes. So Trump actually walked. I mean, it's just so amazing how Trump, says there are tapes. And the reason why Comey wanted a special prosecutor was because he wanted those tapes. Because if there were tapes, then what you would have heard on those tapes is Donald Trump asking James Comey for loyalty and then asking James Comey to let Flynn go. So he was saying, I hope there are tapes. I hope there are. And the president is like threatening James Comey. Well, you better hope there are tapes. He's like, well, somebody needs to go find tapes. Somebody needs to go find out if there are tapes. That would be like great. That would be Christmas. That would be the best. And that's why there's a special prosecutor. And then after Donald Trump fires James Comey, he also needs an acting director. He needs somebody, at the FBI. Because he's dismissed the FBI director. He needs an acting director. So he fires James Comey on May 6th. On May 9th, Donald Trump picks Andy McCabe to be the acting director. And that's how Andy McCabe went to Main Justice. Andy McCabe came out of the New York field office. That is where he worked. And he knew everything that was going on in that New York field office. And I guarantee you that it was Rudy Giuliani that wanted Andy McCabe. I guarantee it's James Kallstrom that wanted Andy McCabe. And that's how Andy McCabe became the acting director of the FBI, handpicked by Donald Trump. We didn't have a Senate-confirmed director. So the deputy director automatically becomes the acting director. It's just a mess. The whole thing is a stinking mess, okay? Now, Andy McCabe is the guy who Donald Trump asked, who did you vote for? And Andy McCabe said, I didn't vote. I voted in the primary. I'm a Republican. I voted in the Republican, but I didn't vote for, president. The whole thing, it just reeks of mafia style, kiss my ring, take the oath of muerta. The boss is sacrosanct. Everybody will die for the boss. We'll all take bullets for the boss. I mean, Michael Kona said he would take a bullet. Do you know what I mean? Like everything that they did, everyone around Donald Trump was compromised. Everyone around that, it's really interesting because, the other day when I saw this was like a nothing story, but it was something, if you were, what's her face? Who's our UN ambassador? Yeah, Nikki Haley. If you were Nikki Haley, I mean, we did a whole show and blamed everything on Nikki Haley as a joke. I mean, it was satire, right? Everything that happened was Nikki Haley's fault. But Nikki Haley was attacked by Kudlow, the newest member of the Trump administration, right? He's the economic advisor because, we lost our economic advisor because our economic advisor advised Donald Trump, don't get into a trade war. Nobody wins. It's really bad. It's bad for everybody. It's bad for working people. It's bad for all the industries that use steel, like the automobile industry, like refrigerators, like, all these things. It's people that make tire rims. I mean, it just affects the entire economy. Don't do it. So he fires, actually Cohen leaves. And so they were all named Cohen. So Cohen leaves and then we end up with Kudlow. It seemed to me like Kudlow got jumped in. You know what I mean? Like a gang thing. Where he had to get his hands dirty. He had to, do a hit in order to be part of the family at the White House. And so he was told to take a shot at Nikki Haley. Do you know what I mean? Discredit her. somehow get rid of her, somehow, off her. And she was having none of it because Kudlow ended up apologizing, which means Kudlow's not going to last very long because he failed his hazing or his jumping in or his, gang initiation. I mean, it just was so weird. It just was so strange out of nowhere. And why? Because she was told that we would be putting sanctions on Russia because Russia is working in cahoots with Bashar al-Assad in Syria. And our big response to, the chlorine attack or the sarin chlorine mix, we don't know. We have no evidence. We have no proof. Was to lob, 104 missiles in under 2 minutes and hit these empty buildings. And so everybody asked her, that's it? Really? That's what you do? I mean, this guy has, gassed his own people like 11 times since Trump's been Trump, and nothing's happened now. All of a sudden, why now? What was this about? And she goes, well, it's not over. It's not over. We're going to do sanctions. They'll be announced on Monday by Mnuchin and blah, blah, blah. And like right after that, they send Kudlow out to, get jumped in to go hit her. You know what I mean? Go smack her around a little bit. Go beat her up. Just go kick the crap out of her. Really? It was so creepy, the whole freaking thing. But Trump didn't want. He had changed his mind, apparently, and left her out there and wanted Kudlow to, prove himself, loyalty and all that. And he does it because Trump changed his mind. He's not going to put sanctions on Russia for helping Assad gas his own people. I mean, it's just such a strange administration, just so completely bizarre. All right, Kent in North Carolina.
Yeah, hi, Randy. First-time caller, long-time listener.
Oh.
I've got a question to tap your legal mind. Is there a chance that Giuliani is joining the Trump legal team in some sort of a way to retroactively declare attorney-client privilege? And
it's not retroactive.
It isn't retroactive.
No, absolutely not. And it's only the privilege only applies to any legal work that he does for Donald Trump from the day he was hired. That's it. That's it.
I remember Giuliani, he said that Trump was a genius when it looks like he pretty much cheats on his tax or evades them totally. And anybody that thinks that of Donald Trump, whether he's a genius or a effing moron, I just don't trust him. I remember Trump. I lived on Long Island for 10 or 12 years, and I remember going through that period with the Central Park jogger where Trump just would not let up on those kids because they were black. And even after they were exonerated, he did not want the city or the state to pay reparations, basically, for their time. And I think that oldest kid was in prison for 17 years.
Yes.
And missed that best part of his life. And I just remember the hate that poured out of Donald Trump at that period. The whole time he was wrecking casinos on that Trump Taj Mahal or whatever that stupid thing was.
Yeah, Atlantic City.
And anybody that supports Trump still can't be good. I mean, it just can't be. And so I see Giuliani, he knew something was going on, and he was getting fed information from that New York FBI field office.
Yeah, there's no question in my mind that he was talking to active agents. I'm not a prosecutor, so I can say that because I don't have, I don't have to produce more evidence than I already produced, which is Rudy Giuliani sitting on TV. And Rudy Giuliani sitting on the radio saying that he's talking to active agents who obviously don't want to be identified.
And then after he realized what he said, did you see him almost swallow his tongue trying to backtrack?
Well, it wasn't, these are edited together. Okay, so Rudy Giuliani said this on Lars Larson's show. And then subsequently he says it on Fox, on Fox News. And then he's asked about it by Wolf Blitzer, who's a serious journalist, and isn't going to let him say just any old crap without holding him to account for what he said. And that's when he backtracks and says, Wolf, if I said it, then I misspoke because I haven't talked to any active agents in 10 months.
Then he changed it to on duty. whatever the hell that means. An FBI agent is always on duty, as long as they're under the.
Look, it's obvious he lied. He either lied when he was talking to Lars Larson, which I don't think he did, because James Kallstrom was also on Fox News saying the same damn thing, that the agents are pissed off, that they're in a fury, that he knows because he talks to them. Same thing, that James Kallstrom told Megyn Kelly is the same thing that Rudy Giuliani told Martha McCallum. So the two of them, obviously we're talking to New York FBI field agents, active ones. And that
is there a reason they had that in so much for Hillary? I mean, I'm not aware.
Well, Rudy Giuliani has ties, through his law firms to several advisors to the Russian government's inner circle. Rudy Giuliani was the lawyer for a company called Tri-Global Strategic Ventures. Okay, and they were closely, aligned with Giuliani Partners LLC from 2008 to 11. And what they were looking to do was invest their money, and this is going to be so shocking to you, in New York real estate.
Okay.
They wanted to take advantage of a weak dollar through real estate investments in New York. And Rudy Giuliani represented Jeffrey Berman, who was one of the Tri-Global managing partners and vice president of Berman Enterprises, a family-run company that worked with Giuliani and Giuliani Partners in 2008. And they built a commercial and residential real estate investment vehicle called the Berman Opportunity Fund, and it was targeting foreign investors looking to take advantage of the weak dollar through real estate investments in New York and Washington.
So it sounds like money laundering.
Yeah.
One step away from it.
Yeah.
But that way.
Yeah.
Well,
and so in 2004, Rudy Giuliani, started consulting Russian oligarchs and clients with Kremlin ties. Transneft, the pipeline giant in Russia, which was the target of Western sanctions imposed after Putin annexed Crimea and started meddling around in Ukraine. There's a guy named Ara Abramian listed on the company's website as a, quote, very close advisor to the Russian government's inner circle, including the president and the prime minister. The founding partners of this company are Andrei Drobyashev, he claims to have strong relations with regional and municipal governments in Russia, and Vitaly Prus, whose website profile says that he has focused on, quote, international image development and PR for Russian and Ukrainian companies, and that from 2008 to 11, he worked, quote, closely with Giuliani Partners, LLC.
That would explain the animosity for Clinton, because she was not going to give any break. Actually, she probably would have cracked the whip on Russia harder than Obama ever did. So that explains it pretty much.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, they all go back to Russia, all of them. I mean, how many people are going to be tied to Russian oligarchs, Russian money laundering, Russian money in New York real estate? I mean, come on. It's endless.
The thing that amazed me the most, I was 5 years old going to kindergarten, and I was ducking covering under my desk.
Yeah, I know.
Kindergarten.
Which was a very good plan for a nuclear holocaust.
Right. That was the Ruskies then, it's the Ruskies now. Why do people keep giving them 10th and 11th and 12th chances? Baffles me.
Yeah, it's very strange.
That answered my question, and it explains a lot, so I appreciate it.
All right, my pleasure. Thanks, Ken. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Thank you.
Care.
Okay, bye. All right, the rest of the show is yours. You can say whatever you want to say. You could do whatever you want to do. But I just needed, I just needed for you to understand how tight this world is, and that Rudy Giuliani, being Trump's lawyer now, is a farce.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Do you think that Comey is going to do something now?
I think there's something happening. I mean, people are asking me, what is this about? I think something big is going to happen. I don't know what it is.
In the next 10 days.
It's just my gut feeling.
That's James Kallstrom. These people are so disgusting. I swear to God, the whole freaking channel is propaganda. I really did think that. I understand we have freedom of speech and all that stuff, and political speech is the most valuable speech and all that. But this is propaganda, okay? And there was criminal activity behind these statements. How this goes well, maybe it won't, because I will tell you that there is an investigation into Rudy Giuliani, the New York field office, by the Department of Justice Inspector General Horowitz. And, listen, we have to live with whatever the result of that investigation is, but we don't yet have a result of that investigation. And so I wait for it. I just sit there and wait for it because I need to know. I need to know. Now, the whole media is going to obsess about the PP tape because Trump obsessed about the PP tape and asked James Comey about that tape in 4 different meetings across months of time. So that's what they're going to focus on. But honestly, I'm much more interested in how that laptop of Anthony Weiner's changed the entire election. That's what I'm interested in. Dennis in Buffalo.
Yeah, I got 2 questions for you, Randy. What do you know the names of those 2 lawyers, or were there more, that came out of Giuliani's office in New York, and are they connected to Susan McDonald and Stormy Daniels? And
what 2 lawyers?
Well, that's just what I'm asking. I listened to your show, and I heard you say that they were from Giuliani's office, because it came up when we were talking about Sean Hannity, and how he got, his name magically appeared in Cohen's office. But wasn't there 2 attorneys or more, 1 attorney that came out? There was one of these recommended attorneys that represented when these girls came from the Giuliani office.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Wrong. Okay, I thought I heard it on your show. And the other issue is, I heard that the whole reason that we're in Syria and all that is over the oil and natural gas. And the Russians wanted a higher dollar for their barrel of oil because it cost so much for them to extract it. And the reason why we got Tillerson, because he has that technology with Exxon to extract their oil at a lower price.
The hell are you listening to?
It wasn't. I don't listen to radio show. I listen to your radio show. I pay for your radio show. That's it. But I did read this article. It's on Facebook, Democracy Now! Or something like that, and she laid it all out. And she said,
Amy Goodman. Was it Amy Goodman?
She might have been involved, but it wasn't her.
No, I mean what you were watching or reading, Democracy Now! That's Amy Goodman. Amy Goodman's show is called Democracy Now! She's extremely intelligent and very reliable. She works for public broadcasting, but she got the last great deal. She makes $2.5 million a year.
This particular was like a Mary Talbert or something like that. She was a former teacher.
I have no idea. So could we move on? We have like 12 minutes left.
Yeah. What else?
All right. Thanks. Chris in Miami.
Hi, Randy. How are you?
I don't know. That guy in Buffalo, I don't know why he always makes it, but he always is just a little crazy. Yeah.
Well, there's a couple subjects I want to touch upon. The previous callers have mentioned possible theories as to why Giuliani is getting involved. The one thing is, even if Giuliani does represent, if he is going to be part of Trump's legal team, it's not going to make a difference, because if he was involved in any way in doing anything inappropriate with the Trump campaign, there is no attorney-client privilege to protect any of those communications, because there's a crime-fraud exception to the attorney-client privilege.
It's also not retroactive, so.
And it's not retroactive, so the privilege
and
is not.
And the privilege needs to be asserted by the client, and I don't hear Donald Trump asserting any privilege. So there you have it.
But it could also be asserted by the attorney, so long as it can. But in this case, it's not going to be applicable anyway. Now, there is another issue that's been.
Yeah, but remember, the president would invoke executive privilege as well, so but that's not retroactive either. And so that could be part of the thinking here. But Rudy Giuliani isn't going to get anywhere with Mueller because Rudy Giuliani is under investigation.
Yes, of course. Now, there's another facet to this investigation that I'm not sure. I mean, I know you talked about it about a month ago when it came out, but it seems, but the media isn't really talking about it anymore, and I don't understand why, and I don't know what Mueller's doing. We got Eric Prince dead to right on a perjury charge. He lied before Congress as far as what happened at the Seychelles.
Yeah, he did.
Why? And what I don't understand is why hasn't Mueller brought any charges against him for perjury?
Only Mueller knows the answer to that.
Right. I mean,
only Mueller knows the answer to that. That's the thing. I mean, nobody knows. Yes, the Seychelles story, he lied under oath to Congress. There's no question. He said that he had gone to the Seychelles in the Indian Ocean to meet with a guy from the United Arab Emirates, and that he just bumped into Russians after, and that the prince from the UAE said, "Oh, there's Russians here. Maybe you want to sit and have a beer." That whole story was a lie. Obviously, it was a complete and total lie. The meeting was arranged by that guy George Nader. Sorry, Ralph. George Nader, and George Nader is cooperating with Mueller. So obviously, Mueller knows that Eric Prince lied under oath because George Nader was the person who arranged that meeting, and he's cooperating with Mueller. He's a Lebanese businessman who is, he was the one that brokered the meeting. He's the one that, Eric Prince asked him to put him together, with the Russians, and the United Arab Emirates prince said, yes, sure, we'll do that. We can meet at my place in the Seychelles. Nobody will look for us there. And that's exactly what happened, and we know that. We just don't know what Mueller's doing with it.
Well, I think eventually, I'm hoping that he brings charges against him and flips him. And I think that's what's going to happen to Cohen. Because they're setting up Cohen on some very serious charges.
Cohen's problem is that he conspired against his own clients. Okay, that Cohen was referring women, the men on the side, like the Donald Trump, the man on the side of the complaint by a woman. Cohen was calling up this other attorney and saying, "Hey, I'm hearing rumblings about Stormy Daniels. I'm hearing rumblings about her. Go represent her." And then they would make a deal.
Yeah, but idiot boy in the White House doesn't realize just how he's on thin ice. Because even though he was told that the Cohen investigation has nothing to do with it, what he doesn't realize is they're going to get Cohen to flip because Cohen's not going to do 30, 40 years for Trump.
Well, that's what people say. We'll have to see. But that's what people say about Cohen, that he's weak, that he's, a lily-livered, namby-pamby, guy who's too afraid to do jail time. He's afraid of being somebody's wife.
You know what? I'm not buying it. He's going to flip.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what they're saying, that Cohen's going to flip because he's too scared to go to jail.
It's not that he's scared. He's facing a long jail sentence if he goes down for all the charges that they have him on.
I don't even know what they've charged him with, do you?
Well, they're looking at it for bank fraud.
Right, okay? And wire fraud.
Wire fraud. And I believe that some of those sentences carry, I think, a minimum of 5 to 10 years, some of those charges.
I have no idea. All I know is he's in deep trouble and that the smart money around Donald Trump, the previous lawyers, et cetera, are all telling Trump, Michael Cohen, on a scale of 1 to 10 of people who will protect you, he's not even a 1. That's what they're saying.
Not going to protect Trump.
That's what they're saying. He's not going to. Oh, my God. Okay. Jeff in Colorado.
Yes.
Hello.
I'm here. Long time, first time. Be gentle, please.
All right. See?
So two things that have been bugging me about all the pieces that are on the table right now, Randy, is that one, what was the issue that all the officers in the FBI office had with Hillary Clinton? I thought that they were supposed to be apolitical and, they're cops. They're not supposed to be political. And are those individuals still there?
What do you mean, are they still there?
Well, I mean, if the cops that,
They haven't been charged with anything yet. There's an investigation about who inside the New York field office was talking to Rudy Giuliani, James Kallstrom, etc. Now, I think Andy McCabe knows the answer to that, and that might be why the Inspector General found that he wasn't exactly forthcoming with him.
Okay, but yeah, it's just so. Are you saying we are waiting for the names to be revealed?
We're waiting for the Inspector General's report. Yes.
Okay, so I'll have to be patient about that.
Yes, and I do too, and it's. We all have to be patient. We have many investigations. We have a Michael Cohen investigation, which is the Southern District of New York, the U.S. Attorney's Office. Then we have the investigation by the Inspector General at the Department of Justice, Michael Horowitz, who's looking into Rudy Giuliani, James Kallstrom, and the New York field office. And then, of course, we have the big kahuna, which is Mueller, who's looking into Russian interference in our election and any crimes associated with it.
Okay. So I got that. Now, that explains something for me. Now, the second element is that with this Steele dossier and the way that the pieces are on the table right now, I can't see any other explanation other than the Republican leadership knew that Trump was doing this. And they decided to make their bed with this guy and, the actions that were being followed.
Well, they should know now. Let's put it that way. Maybe they didn't know then, but they should know now. And they should have known that the fix was in and that people were meddling with our election when they saw Rudy Giuliani, when they saw James Kallstrom, when they saw Jeanine Pirro, when they saw Fox and Friends, when they saw that they had inside information about the New York FBI. They should have known. They should have said something. They didn't, and now their hands are all dirty. And that's why you're seeing so many Republicans leave. Charlie Dent from Pennsylvania, he's kind of down the middle, Republican, whatever. He's not even going to finish his term. What do we have, like 45 of them just fleeing, just jumping ship, just going away, not going to run for re-election? Some of them aren't even finishing their term. I mean, come on. The crap has hit the fan. Orrin Hatch isn't going to run again. I mean, listen, this is how they're going to take themselves out of it. They're just going to not run, and everybody's going to forget about them. But yeah, they know. They know. If I know, if I know, if I know, then they know.
Yes, but is that not a crime in itself, being complicit? And, if they knew, they could have acted before the damn Republican convention and removed this guy.
How?
Donald Trump, you're colluding with Russians right now.
Well, they could have said something. They could have spoken up. I mean, you look at Ted Cruz, who was, he was so pissed off. Oh, he tweeted ugly pictures of my wife, Heidi. Well, that's just disgusting. And now all of a sudden he's out there running for re-election singing Donald Trump's praises. These are the spineless wonders. These are the lily-livered cowards that are Republican senators, Republican House members. So Don't look to them for, a moral guidance. Don't look to them for following the letter of the law. These people are ass lickers.
Well, I would add that they're complicit. I mean, ass lickers, and, we're going to get power, so we're going to just go along because we're going to end up with power.
Yes.
And that's where I'm like going, at some point, this crosses the line, and I'm like, these guys have no soul.
No, none whatsoever. They are beneath contempt. They are worthless human beings. Their words are meaningless. They all they wanted was that tax cut for the wealthy. And the reason why they were about repealing Obamacare so hard for 7 years, it served two purposes for them. One, Americans were able to become outraged because a black man gave you health care for some reason. And they, Obama had a bone through his nose, for God's sake, as this heinous, African person who gave you health care. What a bastard, right? Anyway, they got all the racists worked up. But the real reason why is not just because it worked as a re-election thing for them. It's because they needed the money. They needed the money that was invested in Obamacare for tax cuts. Remember, they were the fiscal conservatives, right? They were going to give tax cuts, but they didn't want to add to the deficit. They didn't want to add to the debt. Well, after they lost the repeal effort, they weren't even enough Republicans to repeal it because it was popular by that time. They just went ahead and did the tax cut, which was like sitting there and watching these fat freaks, these white men sign big fat checks to themselves and running up the deficit. This is why Paul Ryan is leaving. He cannot justify what he did. This is why half of them are. But yeah, they did it all for money. That's what the repeal about Obamacare was all about. It was about we need money to pay ourselves. We need money for tax cuts. We need money for the corporate donors. We need money for the Koch brothers. We need money for the Mercers. And I need money because I invested in this and that. Rudy Giuliani, he was the lawyer for Purdue Pharma, the oxycodone people, right? I mean, they're all dirtied up. They're all a mess. But that's why they wanted to repeal Obamacare. They just wanted to have at the money and use the money to redistribute it to the wealthy. Well, they couldn't get it. So they redistributed the money from you to the wealthy instead of your health care to the wealthy. One way or another, they were going to do it. And they did do it. And it was another bank heist. And that's all they ever do is rob banks. That's all they ever do. Wells Fargo robs you, and then they, get money from knowing that the market's going to crash. Listen, this is the dirtiest party I've ever seen in my life. And this Republican Party has nothing to do with your grandpa's Republican Party. It's a whole new crime family. Buy a stinking podcast.